I accidentally stripped the gears on this machine. When I was knitting, I had my hand here and I accidentally pushed that lever down to P and I didn't know it, and I was cranking really fast, and when I got to that spot I stripped the gears before I knew that I was doing that. So I fixed another machine using Mighty Putty and it worked very well, so I'm going to do this machine too. First thing I'm going to do is take these little screws out from these little tabs right here in the middle of the machine. Then I'm going to turn it over and remove all of the screws that are in these holes all the way around the edge. It's pretty deep, so you're going to have a long, skinny Phillips head screwdriver to get those out. So let me go ahead and get those screws out. Next step, hold everything together and flip it over. If you can't take this outer ring off, if you're having trouble getting it off, you may need to loosen the handle. Just pop this little cap off, and then there's a screw in there that you can loosen. This screwdriver is not the right size, but sometimes it wiggles enough where you don't need to take that handle or loosen that handle. I did not loosen my handle because it wiggles enough, and there is a little ledge there that's holding that outer ring on. Just pull your handle back a little bit and lift this outer ring off. Now if you'll lay everything down in the order that you removed it, then it's easier to put it all back together. So the next part is this ring, and you see I've got my outer ring marked with a little green mark right there for my black needle, because those numbers are really hard to see. So I'm going to lift that off. Next you want to take this black retainer ring off. And you also need to mark the slot where your black needle goes, because it's next to this little stopper that controls when you're doing flat panel knitting. So I'm just going to mark this as the slot that I want to put that needle back in. And you can also just look at the little stopper, but this just makes it easier just to go ahead and mark it. The next thing you need to take out is this inner ring, and it also has one side that's different that fits in there in that position. So lay that aside, and I want to show you this before I take the needles out. There's a little heel that the needles ride up on, the butts of the needles. This little doodad right there will travel up that little hill, and that's what makes the needles rise up. I'm just going to turn my machine upside down to take these needles out quickly. Okay, and the next thing, there is this little lever here that controls the flat panel and the tube knitting. Put it in the highest position so that you can lift this ring out. And make a note of how this ring fits in there. You'll see that this is the slot that determines that flat panel knitting. So you'll have to put this back in the same position. So I'm just going to work it out from behind this little lever right here and take that out. And then I'm going to remove the needle holder ring. And underneath, that's the ring that I need to repair. You'll see the gears on the handle, or what's riding on these little teeth here. And I can see very quickly right here I broke those little teeth whenever I tried to go past the part where the lever was down. Normally you'd be knitting really slowly and you would feel it before you did that. But there's no way that that's going to be able to be glued back down. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take that off. And then I'm going to use Mighty Putty to rebuild another tooth right there. So let me go ahead and get that off, and then I'll get my Mighty Putty ready. I'm going to be using the JB Weld Steel Stick to repair my machine today. I don't have any Mighty Putty, but this is what I used last time, and it works very well. The instructions tell you to use gloves when you handle this because it could irritate the skin, but I usually don't wear gloves. This plastic. So I'm just going to cut off a little slice of this putty. I'm just cutting a slice of it off. And then you have to mix it. It sticks to your fingers pretty badly, so. And then you have to mix it till the whole thing is a uniform color. Just mix it up just like you would with Play-Doh. So let me mix this up really well, and then I'll come back. I also used some alcohol to clean up inside of here because there's a lot of grease inside of here that they use to lubricate these needles. And so I cleaned up the area just in case, just to make sure that this stuff would stick well. And there's the missing tooth right there. Obviously this is more putty than I need, but I think it'll mix better if you slice off at least a 1/4 inch off of that putty. Make sure you get a good mix. So what I did on the other machine that I had to repair is I just kept trying to shape out another little tooth there. And even though it's messy at first and it doesn't look right, you just get some little toothpicks or whatever and then just keep shaping this and removing material until it's pretty close to what the other teeth look like. And then you let it dry, and then you come back after it's dried really hard and you shape it some more with a file and get it to where the machine doesn't catch on that spot right now. So let me finish shaping that out. Okay, I had to work fast. This is already getting a little hard, and it actually gets a little easier to shape once it starts getting a little harder or firmer. But this is a pretty rough shape of the little pyramid, and it doesn't matter if it sticks out farther this way or taller, because when this dries really hard, I'm going to come back with a little tiny file and shape everything out. And again, I've tried this before and was successful with it, so we'll see how this one goes. But I'm just going to leave it rough, like, see if I can get that in the camera. I'm going to leave the shape really rough. And because you want to have something to shape with. If you tried to make it the same size at this point, if the material shrinks or whatever, then your little tooth will be too small. So just leave it really rough, let it dry completely. Read the label and see how long it needs to dry. It may be the next day before you can get back to this and then shape it further. When you're working on shaping this thing, just be sure that when you're filing between that you're not accidentally filing down the teeth on either side. So you have to be really careful and make sure that you're filing only the one that you're working on. Just wanted to show the progress that I've made on shaping this little tooth. I don't believe the JB Weld is completely set, but I find it's a little bit easier to work with when it's not completely set. I can see by looking at the plastic of the teeth on either side that I probably should have overlapped all three and reshaped those other two as well, just to give them a little bit more strength. My tooth is still a little bit higher than the other two on either side, but I'm going to just test this as I go, and I don't want to take off too much material, but I'm going to put it against the gears of the handle just to see what it looks like. I'm going to try to get this in the camera where you can see the tooth that I repaired against the gears in there. And it seems to be turning fine. Just want to make sure that they fit between the gaps like the original. And I'm going to go ahead and put this together just the way it is, because it seems to be rolling fine, and see how the machine works now. I'm looking at this at a different angle, and I can see that the actual handle, the teeth don't meet all the way to the back. They don't meet back here against the edge of the machine. They only grab on here toward the front. So if you do your shaping, concentrate more on the front edge of this tooth. But I believe this is going to work just fine. I may need to come back later and add some material on these other teeth that are on either side, which I probably should have done this time. It would have been a lot easier to do all three at the same time. But let me test this out. I just discovered that this little doodad comes out completely. It just slips into this little slot right here. So when you're disassembling the machine, you can take this out so it's not in your way. And it slips back in there. And that's the little tab that works the flat panel mechanism. Might be a good idea to clean and lubricate now. You place the teeth down against the handle gear there, and then you can go ahead and put this ring back on. And if you need to, you can take this thing off to get it back in there. And that sits, let's see the spot. Let me turn this wheel. This little spot right here. It goes right in there. Now you can put all your needles back in, and be sure you put your black needle in the spot that you marked. And my mark is faded off of there, but I know where it goes. So go ahead and put all your needles back in. They go back in with the hook facing outwards. The next thing you need to do is line up this little area in the area that matches on the inside, and you'll match up these screw slots right there, and you can go ahead and put the screws back in to these 4 places. Next thing is the black ring, and the needles fit into these holes, so just wiggle them into place. You may need to reach under there and straighten up some of these needles, and just look around and make sure all the needles are in the hole. You can actually turn the handle and make sure. The next thing that goes on is this white ring, and you want to make sure the number 1 is lined up with your black needle. Now you you can replace the outer ring and just line this up with the handle. And you may need to lean it in there and wiggle the handle to make room for that to go back in there. It's not really hard. And then you just turn the machine over by holding everything together, and then put in the 7 screws that go on the bottom of the machine, and then you'll be finished. Alright, I've cast on some yarn, and it is knitting without slipping. I do feel a little bit of a bump when I come around that side, and I could have shaped that tooth a little bit better, but all in all I think that the repair is successful.